Picture this, a collector scrolling through auction sites late at night, eyes widening in disbelief as Patek Philippe resale prices suddenly crater before their very eyes. The numbers don't lie, the whispers are getting louder, and the evidence? It's damning. Once untouchable, Patek Philippe was the ultimate symbol of wealth and refinement. Owning a Patek wasn't just about telling time, it was about telling the world you'd arrived. It was generational wealth on your wrist, a family heirloom before you even passed it down. The kind of watch that opened doors, commanded respect, and whispered elegance in rooms full of noise. Now, bankruptcy rumors swirl around this Swiss titan. Headlines are surfacing. Social media chatter is exploding. Collector demand is plummeting. Watches that once commanded six-figure premiums are sitting unsold on secondary markets. Auction houses are quietly lowering estimates, and even the most loyal collectors are starting to panic. How did a brand that once commanded million-dollar premiums lose its grip so fast? How does a name synonymous with horological perfection suddenly face an existential crisis? The decline isn't random, it's systematic. Today, we'll count down the 7 Patek Philippe models, whose collapse tells the full story. From dress watch elegance to hype-to-death steel sports watches, each ranking reveals a brutal truth about scarcity, status, and the fragility of perceived value. Stick around. Number 1 will shock you. By the end, you'll understand exactly why Patek Philippe is teetering on the edge and what it means for the entire luxury watch industry. 7. Patek Philippe Calatrava 6199-52226 series. Let's start with the Calatrava, the dress watch that defined understated elegance for generations. This was the rite of passage. The watch you bought when you wanted to signal sophistication without screaming for attention. Clean dial, slim profile, pure horological refinement. It was the epitome of quiet wealth. For decades, the Calatrava represented everything Patek stood for: timeless design, impeccable craftsmanship, and the kind of subtle status that only insiders could recognize. You wore a Calatrava to boardrooms, galas, and family dinners where old money congregated. But the world changed. The market shifted. Dress watches became invisible in the social media era. Sporty, hype-driven models took over Instagram. Steel sports watches became the new status symbols. The Calatrava, once a badge of refined taste, started feeling irrelevant. Chrono24 data shows lagging resale. Secondary market inventory is piling up. Watches that should move quickly are sitting for months. Collectors who once treasured these pieces are quietly offloading them, realizing the market has moved on. The emotional toll cuts deep. Owners thought they were investing in timeless elegance. Instead, they're holding watches that feel almost invisible in today's hype-obsessed landscape. Think of it as a cashmere sweater in a world of sneakers, objectively superior but culturally sidelined. A whisper in a dubstep rave. The Calatrava isn't bad, it's just forgotten. And in luxury, forgotten is fatal. From quiet elegance to overlooked classic, we move to a more complicated downfall. 6. World Time, Travel, 5230-5326-5524. The World Time collection was technical sophistication incarnate. Multiple time zones displayed on a single dial. Engineering brilliance wrapped in cosmopolitan prestige. For collectors, owning a World Time meant something. It signaled global awareness, sophistication, the kind of person who needed to know what time it was in Tokyo, London, and New York simultaneously. It was the badge of the truly international elite. But here's the brutal truth. Trend fatigue killed it. Complicated dials became less visually viral. In an Instagram-first world, watches need to photograph well, tell a simple story, and communicate status instantly. The World Time does none of that. Auction activity has slowed dramatically. Resale periods have stretched longer. Bidding has softened. What was once a collector favorite is now a niche curiosity that takes real effort to sell. The emotional shift is crushing. From cosmopolitan badge of sophistication to a watch that feels complicated, not in the horological sense, but in the harder-to-flex sense. Think of it as a bespoke suit nobody wears, rare books nobody reads, objectively valuable but culturally dormant. The market doesn't care about technical brilliance anymore. It cares about hype, scarcity, and visual impact. The World Time has none of the above. Even Patek's engineering marvels couldn't outrun the market shift. Their 5 grand complications: perpetual calendars, minute repeaters. Now we enter dangerous territory. The grand complications, Patek's crown jewels of craftsmanship. Perpetual calendars that account for leap years automatically. Minute repeaters that chime the time with cathedral-like acoustics. These aren't just watches, they're mechanical symphonies, collector holy grails that represent the absolute pinnacle of what Swiss watchmaking can achieve. For generations, owning a grand complication meant you'd reached the summit. These watches commanded respect. They justified 6-figure price tags. They were conversation starters, legacy pieces, and investments wrapped into wearable art. But the market turned hard. Oversaturation and speculative bubble dynamics destroyed the mystique. Too many variations flooded the market. Speculators treated these masterpieces like commodities. Auction houses pushed too hard, too fast, and when the hype faded, liquidity evaporated. Now, auction volatility is extreme. Prices are softening across secondary markets. What should be slam-dunk sales are becoming negotiation nightmares. The emotional devastation is total. These were supposed to be pinnacle status symbols, untouchable, timeless, sacred. Instead, they've become intimidating and inaccessible in all the wrong ways. Think of it as a luxury penthouse in a cooling market. Objectively stunning, but harder to move when everyone's fleeing to liquid assets. A masterpiece shouting into emptier rooms. Collectors thought they were securing horological immortality. Instead, they're watching their safe bets wobble under market pressure. Now let's dive into Patek's sporty pivot, the Aquanaut. The 4 Aquanaut 5167-5164 series. The Aquanaut was Patek's answer to a changing market, sporty, youthful, Instagram-friendly. It was the breakout model that proved Patek could do casual luxury. The embossed, tropical strap became iconic. The integrated bracelet design felt fresh. And for a moment, the Aquanaut represented Patek's future, a bridge between heritage and modernity. It was the watch that made Patek cool again. Younger collectors embraced it. Influencers flexed it. Wait lists exploded. The Aquanaut became the accessible entry point into the Patek universe, if accessible means 20,000 plus and a multi-year wait. But here's where things get uncomfortable. Rising retail prices and the sport watch market correction killed the momentum. Patek kept hiking prices. The secondary market started softening. Demand couldn't keep pace with inflated valuations. Wider price spreads emerged between buy and sell offers, signaling uncertainty. The emotional shift is subtle but devastating. What was once a trendy flex is now a cautious investment. Buyers are hesitating. Sellers are discounting. The hype has cooled. Think of it as a blue chip holding, not the breakout rocket it once promised to be. Safe, sure, but not exciting. Not the wealth multiplier collectors expected. The Aquanaut isn't collapsing, it's stagnating. And in a hype-driven market, stagnation is decline. And speaking of breakout rockets, the Nautilus enters the spotlight. Before we continue, let's reveal what's really happening here. Every decline ties back to 3 brutal forces: speculative overvaluation, market saturation, and a cultural shift toward hype-driven scarcity. Patek didn't lose its craftsmanship. The market lost its discipline. For years, collectors treated these watches like stocks. Speculators inflated values. Auction houses fueled the frenzy. And when the bubble dynamics shifted, the entire ecosystem collapsed. The watches that suffer most are the ones built on hype, not heritage. The ones that relied on Instagram flex culture instead of generational legacy. And the ones positioned as investments rather than art. This isn't just about Patek, it's about the entire luxury industry reckoning with what happens when scarcity becomes manufactured and status becomes performance. If you're deep into this breakdown, pause and think. Which Patek model are you holding? And what does it say about your wealth signal? Drop your answer in the comments below. Now let's continue with the watches that fell the hardest. 3. Nautilus 5711's 1A. Here it is, the ultimate modern icon. The watch that defined an era and nearly destroyed a brand. The Nautilus 5711 in steel was perfection. Integrated bracelet, iconic porthole design. Gerald Genta's masterpiece reborn for a new generation. For years, it was the watch everyone wanted but almost no one could have. Pandemic-era hype sent it into the stratosphere. Prices exploded from retail to $200,000 plus. Celebrities flaunted them. Rappers referenced them. Instagram made them the ultimate flex. Owning a 5711 meant you'd made it, not just financially, but culturally. Then reality crashed the party. Speculative overvaluation and hype burnout triggered a brutal correction. Prices plummeted from peak levels to around $110,000 on average. Still expensive? Absolutely. But the collapse from $200K plus to current levels represents a devastating loss for anyone who bought at the top. Auction houses quietly adjusted expectations. Secondary market sellers started accepting lower offers. And the once untouchable 5711 became a cautionary tale about buying at peak hype. The emotional wreckage is total. From red carpet status symbol to market correction case study. From this will only go up to how much did I just lose. Think of it as prime real estate caught in a market correction. Still valuable, but no longer invincible. Or better yet, a limited edition McRib. Hyped to absurdity during its peak, then forgotten when the next trend arrives. The Nautilus 5711 isn't dead, but its myth of invincibility is shattered. And for Patek, that myth was everything. Complexity returns with the Nautilus complications. 2. Nautilus complications, 5726, 5990. The Nautilus complications were supposed to be the best of both worlds. Sporty aesthetic, plus functional brilliance. The 5726 annual calendar, the 59990 chronograph. High complication allure wrapped in the most desirable case shape in modern horology. These were the ultimate flex watches, not just beautiful, but technically impressive. Not just rare, but genuinely useful. For a moment, they represented peak Patek. Heritage craftsmanship meets contemporary desirability, the kind of watches that justified their six-figure price tags through both form and function. But the market had other ideas. Price shock and trend pivots dampened appetite fast. Retail hikes pushed these watches into nosebleed territory. Buyers started balking at 80,000 plusers for a steel sports watch. Complications or not. Secondary demand softened. Wider bid-ask spreads emerged. Auction activity cooled. The emotional reality cuts deep. What was once an aspirational tool watch, something you could actually wear and use, now feels like an overhyped trophy that costs more than anyone wants to pay. Think of it as a second home that's just too expensive to justify, or a supersized sandwich no one can finish. Impressive in theory, but exhausting in practice. Collectors thought they were getting the perfect intersection of sport, complication, and investment. Instead, they're holding watches that feel increasingly difficult to move in a market that's lost confidence. Finally, the crown jewel, or the ultimate cautionary tale. The 1. Nautilus Tiffany, ultra-rare steel. We've arrived. The top of the collapse. The watches that epitomize everything wrong with the modern luxury watch market. Nautilus Tiffany, ultra-rare steel limited editions. The watches that made headlines with multi-million-dollar auction sales. The ultimate collector flex. The pieces speculators fought over like gladiators. This was the craziest hype in horological history. Auction houses fueled the frenzy. Collectors treated them like lottery tickets. Prices soared into territories that had nothing to do with craftsmanship and everything to do with speculation. A $50,000 watch sold for $6 million, not because it was $6 million better, but because the market lost its mind. Then the bubble dynamics shifted and everything collapsed. Extreme volatility, listings sitting unsold, overexposure killing mystique. Watches that once commanded insane premiums are now struggling to find buyers at any price. The Tiffany Nautilus, once the ultimate unicorn, now feels like a phantom. Visible but untouchable, hyped but hollow. The emotional devastation for collectors is complete. What was supposed to be cult legend status has become a volatile trophy whose value swings wildly based on market sentiment, not inherent worth. Think of it as a luxury asset class, leveraged to peak. A phantom unicorn that existed more in imagination than reality. Caviar on a fast food budget. Something that makes no sense but briefly felt possible. These pieces reveal the darkest truth. Even Patek Philippe, with all its heritage and prestige, isn't immune to speculative collapse when hype replaces substance. For collectors holding these watches, the shock is existential. They thought they were securing ultimate status. Instead, they're holding symbols of Patek's fragility, despite its iconic status. And for Patek itself, this collapse represents an identity crisis that threatens the brand's very survival. Patek Philippe's potential bankruptcy isn't about poor craftsmanship or declining quality. It's about market dynamics that punish even the most prestigious brands when speculation, oversaturation, and hype replace genuine scarcity and desirability. This ranking reveals a brutal truth. Luxury isn't just about quality, but timing, scarcity, and cultural relevance. The watches that collapsed hardest were the ones built on speculation, not legacy. The ones that relied on Instagram flex culture instead of generational heritage. The ones positioned as investments rather than art. Looking forward, Patek faces a critical choice: recalibrate toward genuine scarcity and innovation, or continue the hype cycle until the brand collapses entirely. Quiet luxury may resurge. Patek might regain balance by pulling back from oversaturation, controlling production, and avoiding the hype inflation that nearly destroyed them. But the damage is done. Trust has been shaken, collectors have been burned. The psychological takeaway is universal. Status symbols can collapse as fast as they rise when demand shifts. What seems untouchable today can become worthless tomorrow. And treating luxury as investment is gambling, not wealth preservation. For the broader industry, Patek's struggles are a warning. Rolex, Audemars Piguet, Richard Mille, all are vulnerable to the same dynamics. Oversaturation, hype fatigue, and speculative bubbles don't discriminate. Which luxury brand could be next to crash, and which might quietly thrive by avoiding these mistakes? We'll explore exactly that in the next video. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the breakdown, because in the world of luxury, the next collapse is always closer than you think.